Hi everyone, my name is Jackie and I'm going to be doing a book review today on Gods of Wyrdwood, which I'm probably saying that wrong. The author is RJ Barker and the narrator is Jude Owusu. This is a fantasy novel. There is death and murder, but there is no sex. So I would say that this is appropriate for all ages. And even though there is murder and battle and fighting, it's pretty mellow. It's not talking about, entrails and guts everywhere. So I think this would be okay for like a younger-ish audience, just to be clear. Let's start with our main male lead. His name is Kahan. He is a forester, which means he is really comfortable going into the forest, unlike the village he lives by. He does not live in the village. He lives by the village on a piece of property that his parents owned. When he was 6, he was taken away by, I don't know if you'd consider them a monk, but like a monk. They said that he was special, that he was going to be like the bringer of fire who's going to burn the world but like start it anew. Like he was the chosen one and he was special. So they took him and his sister just to make him more comfortable, is basically what they said, so she could protect him and whatnot. But you meet him as an adult. He has a herd of animals that you can take their fur, and he takes them into town. But when he goes to town, he gets treated incredibly badly because he is not a part of a clan. So in this world, basically, if you don't belong to a clan, you're a parasite or you're just as low as can be. So everyone they paint their faces white, and then they have like clan paint on them, whether it's white or red or whatever. So he doesn't have any face paint, so he's a pariah. Nobody likes him. Barely anyone will trade with him. If they trade with him, they pay him like the smallest amount of money that they can. He's just treated super poorly until he's needed, which you'll find out later. Kahan is a Rye, and a Rye is a type of person that has a cowl inside of them. I view a cowl as like a parasite that gives you magical ability. So the Rye can touch people and suck out their life force and are able to use magic that way. Kahan has forbidden himself from using that power anymore. So to everybody he comes across, they just see him as a normal man or a forester, except for other Rye who can see him for being a Rye. Like if a Rye meets a Rye, they can tell they're a Rye, right? Okay. One of the big villains of this world is Curvin, which I'm probably saying wrong too. She is the queen, which it's not the queen. That's not what the title is in the book, but I'm going to phrase her as being the queen. She is the bad queen of this world, and she's in charge of a bunch of bad Rye and soldiers. She has a child named Vin who has who is Rye and who has a cowl, but Vin has not killed anybody to feed the cow. So it's weird how they do they them in this one. So but they also say it's a girl too, so it's kind of confusing. I'm just gonna say. So the Vin's mom, who is the Queen Curvin, sends their child to the forest with a bunch of really mean Rye so Vin can kill somebody and become powerful. Their whole point is like they take prisoners, they have prisoners, and they're gonna kill the prisoners so Vin can gain their power. One of these prisoners just so happens to be Kahan because he let a small forest creature go from a fighting pit, so he got arrested, unfortunately. But instead of dying, he is able to defeat the Rye that is there, and him and Vin escape into the forest for a little bit. I mean, this is, like I said, the very, very long cycle of stuff that happens. But then Vin ends up going back home. Kahan ends up going back to his village, and then the village leader's son ends up being called to the forest by like forest creatures. So then Kahan and Udini, who is a monk of a god who nobody worships except for like her and Kahan, she ends up going with him into the forest, like deep in the forest, like farther than even Kahan's ever gone. Like they go deep in the forest, and they meet all these kind of like cool creatures and humanoid things. That part is interesting because it just shows you how massive the world is, and a lot of the creatures are not anything you could even like think of. It's hard for me to explain. They're so unique that to try and think of other beings or creatures or mythological animals, it's not really easy or feasible for me to sit here and be like, wow, there's creatures that are like basilisks or do you know what I'm saying? It's just the author made these creatures so unique to this story and this book and this world that I can't even go into one of my D&D books, like my D&D creature book, and be like, this is what they're talking about. It's all their own, which is what I mean by like when you read this book, you have to go slow, otherwise you're gonna miss a ton of information. For example, one of the creatures, like forest children, is a three-eyed humanoid creature, smaller than creatures and dumber than humans is what I wrote. They also have dullards, which strip powers from the Rye. They don't strip them completely. Dullards are like, they get within a certain vicinity of the Rye, and then the Rye can't use their powers. Once they get away from the dullards, their powers come back and increase. At the beginning of every chapter, you get a little splurge or memory of Kahan's past, and that slowly builds up closer to like the present time. So you have present moment in time, and then at the beginning of the next chapter, you get a little spiel about when he was younger and what was going on, and then you go back like to the present, and then you go back to the past, and just like, it's a nice back and forth so you can kind of see what was happening back then and how that kind of helped form and shape him into who he is now and why he is the way he is and what he does, if that makes sense. Kahan also has a pet named Gara, I think, if I wrote it down right. It's almost weasel-ish. Like, it's small enough that it can climb up and wrap around his neck. But I'm pretty sure there was a part where it was able to shapeshift and get bigger. But I'm honestly not sure. And I think I asked my buddy Wade, and I think we both came up with question marks at the end of that conversation because we just weren't 100% sure. Like I said, there's just a lot that goes on in the book, and there's a lot of information that you're trying to retain as you're reading it. I listened to the book on Audible. It is 23 hours long. It's a decent read. I thought it was a pretty long book. This is not a book that you can just blow through and power read. This is something that you're going to have to actually listen to, take your time, pay attention, read carefully. This is by far one of the most unique kind of, not sci-fi, but fantasy reads I have ever read. It's almost like Mistborn. I'm not saying it's like Mistborn. I'm saying it's like Mistborn in the way that it's really different than a traditional fantasy novel. For example, in this one, there's no metal in the entire world, or at least in the books. So if they have armor, it's from trees or tree bark. If they have axes, it's made from wood. Swords made from woods, like wood. They don't have any metal at all, which I found weird, but at the same time, like, I get it. It's just one of those tidbits in here that is very unique to this specific world. And they also have trees that are bigger than skyscrapers. Like, try to imagine trees so big that you can't even see the tops of, or they're so wide you can't even see where they begin and end. Like, just trying to imagine how ginormous these trees are is mind-blowing, mind-boggling, to say the least. I actually had to sit and take notes, which isn't common for me to have to do, but I had to take notes, and I did a buddy read with my friend Wade. I did enjoy listening to this book. It's just so different from any other ones that I've read. Like I said, you really have to pay attention when you're going through it. Otherwise, you're going to miss a ton of information and you're going to be confused. So just to be aware of that. But if you want a different and unique fantasy read, this would be a great one for you. It's got a lot of depth to it, and even though it's so long, it's not boring. There's not really any dullness to it because it is so unique in the fantasy genre that even if he's not doing much of anything, or there's not anything really exciting going on, you're still intrigued to listen to it because it's such a unique world with unique creatures that even him walking through the forest is an interesting endeavor. So I appreciate you guys watching. I hope this review was helpful to you, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, everyone.